Welcome to the Osmium Update, your weekly data and infrastructure update from the Osmium Data Group. Brought to you by Max Mortillaro and Arjan Timmerman.
So, here we are again for another Osmium update. Welcome, Max, and let's dive right into it. So, we've got a couple of things to talk about. Let's say the first one would be, I would say, the A3 Communications event that we went to in Munich. And afterwards, we can talk about the NetApp event that we were virtually at. So let's first of all get into A3 Communications and what was going on there. Go.
Yeah, thank you, Ariane. So, as you said, Munich, A3 Comms. It was really interesting. We had 4 companies presenting. 2 of them were presenting long-term storage, or rather archival solutions, Terabyte and Piql. Never heard of them, by the way, before. And then we had also Hammerspace and Keepit presenting. So I'll make it short on Hammerspace and Keepit. Keepit is a SaaS data protection provider. So they protect all kind of workloads like, Salesforce, Microsoft, 365, and so on. They have a very comprehensive coverage. They're Danish-based, so very much focused on the region. Very good stuff. However, it's limited to SaaS workloads. That's their kind of really focus. We have probably an article on that on our blog at osmiumdatagroup.com. Same for Hammerspace, a good presentation, but it was for more or less the same kind of presentation we've had back in November or December at the other A3 Comms events. So if you check again our blog, you will find there comprehensive information about that. What really piqued my mind, and I believe that I was not the only one there interested, was what was going on in the archival space. Again, as I said, Terabyte and Piql. Those 2 companies are presenting a very unique and innovative approach to data archival. So they have each developed their own technology. Piql is very much focusing on long-term conservation of data on a media which is very similar to 35 millimeter film. As a photographer and someone who's done a lot of film photography, I really love what they do. They use silver halide film, and they claim that it has very, very long durability. Sometimes they say 500 years. Other claims are 1,000 years. And the other one, Terabyte, is developing a brand new concept of using very thin glass plates which are coated with ceramic, and they're planning to write on that first. I don't really know if they're using lasers at the moment, and if they plan to implement something else in the future or some kind of beams. So that's kind of the high level picture, the big picture here. And the idea behind those 2 things is that they claim that long-term archival with tapes or with drives is way too expensive. So that's why they're developing this, media. So Arjan, what was your view on those 2, companies and the overall concept of what's going on here?
So, I think the overall concept of archival is really interesting, be it, and I think we talked about it during the sessions as well, be it that it is a niche market. Why? Because a lot of the data that exists today is data that doesn't have to be kept for 1,000 years or 2,000 years. And in case of Terabyte, I think it was even like something like 5,000 years or something like that they claimed. There's so much information that needs to be stored for that amount of time. First of all, how are you? You're claiming something that has never been tested. So there's that. There was the talk about, okay, so how are you going to make sure that if in 2,000 years nobody knows the technology anymore, but you still want to get the archival back, or you want parts of the archival back, how are you going to do that? And the thing was that it was very interesting to see that they could do it digital, but also in image kind of way, right? So they had a picture of the Mona Lisa. They could put it in, I don't know what the format was, but it was really small, but it still was 4K Mona Lisa. So they can do it in certain ways that people could just use, in our case, a telephone or something like that, and just scan it and get information from that because it's really an image. That was for now. It was QR codes, right? So it was a QR code that you could scan, and then you could get the information. So it's really interesting. But archival is interesting in a sense of what do you want to preserve that long, and is it what is needed, and what is the cost of it? And like you said, Terabyte was it was glass. It was just a glass thing that they could even put in the cartridges for that tapes, right? Underground.
Yeah, the vault in the Svalbard, right?
Yeah. So
It doesn't get taken over by fascist Norway, as one of the guys said. In 2000 years.
yeah, it's interesting stuff. And archival for that long, especially for, I would say, things that we really want stored in a fashion that in 5,000 years they can still reach back to it, is interesting. But for me, it's, at least for now, still a very niche market. And I can understand that they're talking to libraries, museums, and that kind of stuff, defense departments and all that kind of stuff. I can understand that they work with them, but for you and me, I don't really see the use case.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I want to close on that with a couple, doubts. The very important thing that you said at the beginning was that data, as there are multiple drivers where you want to conserve data, right? But in the end, if you look at it, it comes back to a kind of a data management, or rather data governance, topic, right? Because the reason why you want to archive data, there is a simple use case. If it's archival for the purpose of national archives, museums, etc., which, by the way, seems to be the area of focus of Piql, is great. Especially with Piql's format, what you were explaining, they have a self-descriptive thing where you can see what is in there, so you can zoom and you can read in human readable language the instructions. You can put there some code, so it can execute the code to open the image and load the program which shows a TIFF image, and then it can load the TIFF image of the Mona Lisa afterwards. So it's really interesting for that use case. The use case that Terabyte is pushing is more about massive storage, long-term storage, not really for. It could do also kind of museum archival purpose, but then it has a very specific format which requires a reader. They are working on developing the writing and reading technology. At the moment, I think that they're using a 500 nanometer laser, and in the future they want to go with something a bit even better, with a better laser beam or something like that. But the idea there, the driver why enterprises, because the thing is, it's great to develop technology, but then you need to sell it to someone, right? So Piql is easy to sell to museums because in the end, it's 35 millimeter film. The technology kind of exists. They have their writer and so on. In the case of Terabyte, it's going to take a 5-10 year cycle for them to develop fully the technology and build that. And the driver has to be, you have to store a lot of data, and who you sell that to? Organizations, verticals where you have demand, or rather regulation, which impose storage of records on you. So what these records are, it can be medical records, it can be financial records, contract, all of these kind of land occupation stuff. So I'm thinking specifically about all of the contracts and so on, things that need to be, and even I don't know if it was you or someone else saying that life insurance contracts, which can run for more than 100 years. So all of this stuff needs to be stored somewhere. If you store it on tape, it's going to still take a lot of space, even if tape is relatively cheap. You still have to go through a life cycle. You cannot hold stuff on cartridges for 25 years. In fact, one of my early learnings when I was an admin was that sometimes you need to refresh the tapes and make sure that you can read the data back from the tapes, right? So every 5, 10, 15 years, I don't know what is the longevity cycle, you're going to have to get all of the data and rewrite it on different tapes. So that's another challenge. So the question is, if the media, the technology that Terabyte is working on, because I'll put Piql aside because it seems to be very easy, but the stuff that Terabyte is working on, if they're going to be able to develop something and it's going to be cheap enough to manage all of that. That said, last point on that is that I noticed that among the investors is John Colgrove, Coase from Pure Storage. So they seem to have a fairly solid team around them, and I really dig what they're doing.
I totally agree on that. So yeah, with that, I totally understand what you're saying. What it really comes down to is data management, but also knowing what your data is. This is definitely not a thing, I would say, for enterprise markets, that kind of stuff. Be it, there might be some enterprises that want to keep their data longer. It might be a good solution. But in the end, I think this is really focused on, like Piql does, museums, other kind of things that we want to keep the data for years and years to come. There it will be very interesting to see. With Serabyne, it might be different because they really are focusing on really big data sets, also for AI, as they mentioned. And that might become something different. But for now, I think there's still the way of, okay, data management. What is your data? How long do you have to keep it? Because a lot of data, we can keep data forever, but it doesn't make sense to do that. Is there do we want to spend, let's say, maybe it's $1 per terabyte in the end, or maybe it's $100 per terabyte. But do we want to spend that money on data that we're basically never going to touch again? So no.
So I want to close with a few more things on that, because there are several points that you raised which are interesting. One of the things is you want to keep it for a long time, but also you want to make sure that it doesn't get out-tiered, right? One of the things that they emphasize a lot is durability of the media. So one was saying they want to keep something which is as durable as hieroglyphs. They were showing some kind of tablets. I'm a big fan of Sumerian tablets and stuff like that. So always love seeing those things, especially the complaint from Ian Assir. Ian Assir, kudos to you. I'm your big fan. Look that up if you don't know what I'm talking about. But one of the interesting things is they talk about immutability of data, right? So you store data, it's there, it's stored securely. So clearly we're in a different case. And you tell me if I'm saying that wrong, but I believe that one of the things they emphasize is you write the data, it's there, they want to ensure the data is durable, that it cannot get corrupted. They have a lot of claims about resistance against EMP bursts, radiation, etc., etc. One of the guys there at the event was asking, what happens if I need to dispose of the data? And the answer was very simple. You just throw it you just destroy the media, the glass, and you're done with that, right? So, or you just put it through a glass, I don't know, you fill that kind of
it's probably even if you want to throw it in an oven, you're done, right? It's
probably just recycle it. But the thing, Arjan, also with that, why are they developing that as well? I mean, it's not just doing technology for the sake of technology, but you can store a lot of data in a very, very limited space, right? So you have a way better storage density than you would achieve with tapes, in theory, because the prototypes at the moment are not so fantastic, at least on the terabyte side, but they are aware of that and they're working on the next 5-10 years to expand the technology. But you should be able to store way more data if you look at a rack scale than if you are using a tape library, right? So if we get a sum up on the potential advantages, way better density, way better durability, immutable storage, and then also this longevity of the media. Yeah. So there will be a lot more to be said, but I'm closing here for today.
Please feel free to follow us for more insights. You can find us on Blue Sky at Osmium Data Group and on LinkedIn also via Osmium Data Group. Thank you and see you next week for another Osmium update.